Hello, and welcome to the 2021-2022 Dignity Act Mental Health, Violence Prevention, and School Safety presentation. My name is Eric Arlen. I'm the Executive Director for Alternative Education here in Belmar Merrick. I'd like to introduce to you my partner in today's presentation.
I'm Emily Pelucio. I'm the Director of Special Education and PPS.
Okay, so today we have quite the agenda to get through. Um, we're going to start off by going through what the district-wide theme is for this year. We're going to talk about school climate, the Dignity Act, harassment and discrimination policies, use of technology, and school safety. This presentation will be posted on the district website. So if you missed something, please feel free to either rewind the presentation or refer back to it on the district website when you have the opportunity. Okay, so this is this year's theme, being present to create a culture of belonging. In other years, we've had themes like one voice, one message. Um, if if you invest in students, results will follow. They are all very student focused, family friendly kinds of messages that the entire district embraces. This year, we're very focused on being present to create a culture of belonging, making everybody feel like they belong here in this school community, whether we're talking about students, parents, teachers, staff, administrators. We want everyone to feel a sense of belonging, and we will work together as a district to make sure that that happens. Ms.
Okay.
Polisi?
So when we talk about school climate, just in reflecting, we're focusing on creating a culture of love where we're patient, honest, caring, forgiving, trusted, and committed, and thinking of yourself less and focusing on the well-being of all. School climate is defined as the way school culture affects a child's sense of safety, acceptance, and is a critical determinant of their ability to focus on learning. So, having a positive school culture is very important and a big focus for us this school year. According to the New York State Education Department, a positive school culture would include social emotional learning, culturally and linguistically responsive practices, supported academic learning environments, safe physical and disciplinary environments, restorative practices, school community family partnerships, mental health education, and trauma informed practices.
Okay, so this leads into the Dignity Act, which is the main topic of conversation today. The Dignity Act was put into place several years ago. It prohibits acts of harassment and bullying, including cyberbullying and or discrimination by employees or students on school property or at any school function, including but not limited to such conduct, those based on a student's actual or perceived race, color, weight, national origin, ethnic group, religion, religious practice, disability, sexual orientation, gender, which is defined to include gender identity or expression, or sex. Cyberbullying is part of this, and it's defined as harassment or bullying which takes place through any form of electronic communication. There are several laws that preceded the Dignity Act, federal civil rights statutes that are related to schools and harassment, uh, require that schools that receive federal funding are required to address discrimination. It's not a choice, it's a requirement under the law. There are several laws that are relevant to schools that apply to this. The ones that you probably know the most are Title IX, which is sexual harassment, Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, or Section 504, and also the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is language in all of these laws and regulations that support the need for schools to address issues of harassment. Included in that are specific laws that now address race discrimination based on hair or hairstyle. You cannot discriminate against a student because of the hairstyle that they choose to wear. This has primarily impacted students who are Black, who have been told that they look unkempt based on the way that their hair is styled. We are no longer allowed to do that, whether we are talking to an employee or a student. We also cannot in any way discriminate against people for wearing specific religious attire that cannot, or clothing or facial hair that cannot factor into a dress code for the school, for staff or students. Okay, we're going to go past this because, okay, right. So we're going into now signs a child is being bullied. Emily?
Okay, some signs to kind of keep an eye out for that a child is being bullied would be unexplainable injuries, lost or destroyed clothing, books, electronics, or jewelry, frequent headaches or stomach aches, that they seem to be feeling sick, or making excuses that they're feeling sick to leave spaces, changes in eating habits, like suddenly skipping meals or binge eating. Kids may come home from school hungry because they did not eat lunch, so that might be something that the family might notice. Difficulty sleeping or frequent nightmares, declining grades, loss of interest in schoolwork or not wanting to go to school altogether, sudden loss of friends or avoidance of social situations, so they might isolate themselves more, feelings of helplessness or decreased self-esteem, self-destructive behaviors such as running away from home, harming themselves, or talking about suicide. Signs that a child is bullying others. They might be getting into physical or verbal fights, have friends who bully others, start to become increasingly aggressive, all of a sudden have unexplained extra money or new belongings, blame others for their problems, don't accept responsibility for their actions, and are competitive and worry about their reputation or popularity. And there's a link there that kind of gives you some additional information. Some statistics, out of every 5 students, 1 out of every 5 students reported being bullied. A higher percentage of male than females report being physically bullied, whereas a higher percentage of females than males report being the subjects of rumors and being excluded from activities on purpose. 41% of students who report being bullied at school indicate that they think the bullying would happen again. Of those students who reported being bullied, 13% were made fun of, called names, or insulted. 13% were the subject of rumors. 5% were pushed, shoved, tripped, or spit on, and 5% were excluded from activities on purpose. And that's according to the National Center for Educational Statistics from 2019. A slightly higher portion of female than male students reported being bullied at school, so 24% versus 17%.
I'd just like to point out before we go on to the next slide, the 41% of students who reported being bullying at school think that bullying is going to happen again. That's a direct result of how we as school staff and personnel address a bullying situation. We want students to feel that when they come to us with a report of being bullying, that they are being heard and that action is going to be taken. That's very important. We want to get that 41% down to as low as possible.
Okay, so just some more statistics. Bullied students reported that bullying occurred in the following places: the hallway or stairwell at school. And that makes sense because there might not be as much supervision there. Inside the classroom was a little bit less. In the cafeteria, outside on school grounds, online by text, in the bathroom or locker room, and on the school bus. So it's pretty much all around the building, inside and out. 46% of bullied students report notifying an adult at school about the incidents. And the reasons for being bullied reported most often by students include physical appearance, race, ethnicity, gender, disability, religion, and sexual orientation.
Okay. LGBTQ issues are oftentimes the subject, as we learned in the statistics, of bullying. So let's take a look at some LGBTQ statistics. 77% of LGBTQ teenagers surveyed report feeling depressed or down over the past week. the week that they were surveyed. 95% of LGBTQ youth report trouble sleeping at night. 95%. LGBTQ youth of color and transgender teenagers experience unique challenges and elevated stress. Only 11% of youth of color surveyed believe their racial or ethnic group is regarded positively in the US. Over 50% of trans and gender expansive youth said they can never use school restrooms that align with their gender identity. More than 70% report feelings of worthlessness and hopelessness in the past week. Only 26% say they always feel safe in their school classrooms, and just 5% say all their teachers and school staff are supportive of LGBTQ people. 67% report that they've heard family members make negative comments about LGBTQ people. So when we talk about our theme of, being present to, be there to help people feel like they belong, these statistics show that the LGBTQ population in our schools do not feel like they belong. And so we need to make efforts and reach out to them so that they do start feeling like they belong. So transgender students are now protected at the federal and the local level. There is a New York State regulation now about protecting transgender students, and we need to do that in a warm, welcoming environment. So let's talk a little bit about pronouns. So you can see here, there are different pronouns that people who are transgender are going to ask you to use. You need to do your best to use them. You're going to make mistakes. That's okay. But what you should do is you should ask questions. Here's a nice little cartoon that shows you. I'm not familiar with those pronouns. Could you go over them with me? That's a very reasonable thing to talk about with a student who wants to use specific pronouns rather. What you don't want to get into is when you mess up kind of making it into a big scene. Most students who are transgender don't want a big dramatic showcase of your mistake, and you should go past it and either talk to the student later or just correct your mistake without making it into kind of a big dramatic event. We want to take proactive steps to ensure that gender and gender nonconforming students experience a safe and welcoming learning environment free of discrimination and harassment. We want to focus on academic success and emotional health of the student. Kind of forget about their how they identify in terms of their gender, and focus on their mental health and what is best for the students. We make decisions based on what's best for the students.
Okay, so harassment and discrimination policies. So we have the two policies that we're going to go through listed right there. So harassment, bullying, and discrimination. The Board of Education, there is Board of Ed policy posted on the website that addresses these areas. So there's definitions, unacceptable conduct, reporting complaints, confidentiality and retaliation, investigation and resolution procedures, district level procedures, and training that's included in that policy. The role of school staff in dealing with harassment, dignity, and discrimination is to be aware, be sensitive, listen, report harassment, bullying, and sexual harassment. Everyone must consider the health and safety of all parties, when to share the information with a parent, child, or other staff member, and asking the right questions. So these are all worked through as a team at the building level. A whole school approach, building student readiness. So there's an expectation that schools promote positive school culture. So that goes back to the beginning, that encourages interpersonal and intergroup respect among students and between students and staff. To ensure that schools provide all students with a supportive and safe environment in which to grow and thrive. Each of the following facets of the school community must be considered: the social environment, interpersonal relationships, students and staff, respect for diversity, emotional well-being, and the sense of safety, student engagement, school and family collaboration, community partnerships, physical safety, school-wide protocols, classroom management, behavioral environment, expectations and supports, physical and mental well-being, and prevention and intervention services, along with behavioral accountability.
Okay, let's talk about use of technology. Okay, so we do have internet and technology use policies in the district. They address acceptable use of technology, that using technology, and this goes for students and staff, using technology provided by the district and also your own technology using the district network, those are privileges. And you should treat them as privileges. They are not your right. They are not the student's right. And those privileges could be revoked if students or staff are using technology inappropriately. We talk about netiquette in this district, which is network etiquette. You could thank Joe Inako, the Director of Instructional Technology, for a lot of the technical jargon you will be hearing over the next couple of weeks regarding our one-to-one initiative and our cybersecurity and such. Netiquette is one of them. It's, how do we interact with each other online in a way that is respectable and responsible. You have responsibility to promote the appropriate use of technology for your students and to use technology appropriately yourselves. There are definitely security issues. We want you to use caution when clicking on links in emails. I myself have made the mistake of clicking on an insecure link. It is very tricky, and so you need to look and analyze very carefully and follow the instructions of your technology safety training, and do not just click on any link that comes to you in an email. Vandalism of our technology or of any of our web pages is certainly prohibited. Using technology for harassment is also prohibited, and we do not allow the use of VPNs or virtual private networks in district, or I should say, ones that are not approved. Okay, as a human being these days, you likely have some kind of social media account, which is okay to have, but as a professional, you want to take lots of precautions. You want to set all your stuff on private. You want to make sure that you exercise caution and common sense when using social media, sites. As a recommended practice, employees are encouraged to use appropriate privacy settings to control access to their personal social media sites. However, be aware that there are limitations to privacy settings. Private communication published on the internet can be easily made into public information. Furthermore, social media sites can change their current default privacy settings and other functions. As a result, employees are responsible for understanding the rules of social media sites that they are utilizing. It's not an excuse to say that, the site changed their privacy settings and now I am discoverable to all students and they're going to see me at the bar drinking beers and smoking cigarettes. We want to control our public social media image so that anyone who finds us finds something that is appropriate. Very hard to do, but is absolutely necessary. Okay, school safety plans, Ms. Lucio.
So school safety, there's a district-wide safety plan that's located again on the website, along with all of the emergency action plans that we do as drills throughout the school year. So in the event of an emergency, we do practice these drills. So extreme risk protection order legislation. due to the recent acts of gun violence committed across the nation, especially those in schools, has resulted in an increased focus on measures that seek to prevent access to dangerous weapons by individuals. The immediate threat: a school district employee who learns of a potential threat to the safety of students, staff, or faculty must immediately notify a district administration of the nature of the potential threat. When the fact presented suggests that the threat is imminent, district administration should immediately contact local law enforcement in addition to following the standard protocol set forth below. If the district finds itself in such a situation, it's essential that the action is taken without delay to mitigate the risk to the school community. So this is making sure we have that connection and those conversations with local law enforcement to receive guidance from them based upon information that's given to us.
And that if you hear of a threat, you notify a district administrator, or rather a school administrator, immediately so that we can manage that threat appropriately.
So these are some of our emergency response action plans. So we have the shelter in place, a hold in place. The lockdown is when there is an internal threat. A lockout is when there's something going on out in the community. An evacuation drill. And there is this sheet that's been created that gives an overview of each of those plans. And again, we do practice them each year. There's contact information for the local authorities if support is needed. And this goes through an overview of how each of those responses would take place. So the lockdown and lockout, it's announced by the incident commander or the school principal typically. And it goes through step by step the guidelines that are followed. The lockout quick guide, shelter in place quick guide. And you may need to shelter in place because there might be a storm coming also. There's a variety of different reasons for some of these responses to take place. And then there's the evacuation drills.
You should go over this in each of your buildings, but the differences in the different kinds of responses are available in this PowerPoint, as you can see, which will be available on. All right, we're going to talk about child abuse and neglect now. Okay, there is a child abuse policy, which essentially says that school employees, including school administrators, teachers, school nurse, school counselor, school psychologist, school social worker, anyone who holds a teaching or administration license in schools, and school board members are all mandated reporters. Okay, which means that if you find out information that a child has been abused in the school setting, or you witness abuse in the school setting, you are obligated to report that. You can report it directly to Child Protective Services. That is your right to do. We request that before you report it to Child Protective Services, which you can do, which you are entitled to do, that you report it to a building administrator also, so that the building administrator could also follow up on it. The building administrator is not in a position where they can tell you not to report something to Child Protective Services. It is your right to report it to Child Protective Services, whether or not your building principal or building administrator wants you to do so. We ask, though, that if you're going to do that, you notify the building principal or building administrator that you're doing that, like I said, so that that person can follow up on the situation. We are also responsible, the same people are responsible if they hear about child abuse in the domestic setting. So if a student, comes in and reports that they are being abused in any way, or if you see signs of abuse or maltreatment, including marks on the kid's body, we're going to actually get into some of those things a little bit later, a change in their personality, in their appearance, all those things are red flags that something might be going on. If the student tells you something specifically, or you see specific physical signs of abuse, you again are a mandated reporter, and the same holds true. You can call CPS, Child Protective Services, directly. Again, we want you to notify a building administrator. Of course, in both these situations, if a student is showing, signs of domestic abuse, or there have been hints at abuse in the school setting, we also want to alert our mental health team so that they can work directly with the child and on these issues. So let's get into mental health.
Okay, so over the past few years, the district has really kind of shifted and focused on the mental health and well-being of all students. So here's just an image that kind of shows you that we don't necessarily always know what a student is carrying around with them. There are these invisible things that we may not know about them that may be impacting them. So mental illness, research has shown that half of all cases of mental illness begin by age 14. So that's pretty much during our central high school time that we spend with these students. Scientists are learning that changes in the body leading to mental illness may start much earlier before any symptoms appear. So some disorders affecting children may include anxiety disorders. I think we've seen a huge increase in students having anxiety and depression, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, bipolar disorders, eating disorders, and autism spectrum disorders, along with schizophrenia. Mental health statistics. So the average person waits over 10 years after the first symptoms occur before getting treatment. In order to try to kind of pinpoint things, we've done a lot of work working with the elementary school districts to learn a lot more about the students as they're transitioning into our central high school district. Which is very helpful, or has been very helpful over the past few years. The current suicide rate for African American children is 13 and younger is 2 times higher than those of white children. And this is all, again, according to research that was done at the time that it's stated there. 1 in 12 high school students have attempted suicide. The rates of adolescents experience major depression has increased from about 40% from the year 2005 to the year 2014. And I think we've all seen that has continued to rise as we've reached into the nowadays. 22% of youth ages 13 to 18 experience serious mental disorders in a given year. And the first signs and symptoms of chronic mental health conditions can begin around 14 years of age. So again, the time when they're in our high school district.
I'd just like to add that, that first bullet about the average person waiting over 10 years after first symptoms occur. One thing that we've tried to do here to address that in Belmore Merrick is we have forged a relationship with Northwell South Oaks Mental Health Hospital to provide on-site consultation and evaluation, as well as a referral service, so that our students who are experiencing mental health issues don't have to wait. Often, a barrier to getting help with mental health illness is that there are not available providers, or that providers don't accept insurance. We have broken down those barriers by using our relationship with South Oaks. So if you need to refer somebody, a student, for services, please contact your building mental health team, and they know how to get in contact with our South Oaks partners to start this process.
Okay, so violence prevention and mental health. So some different forms of violence. There's school violence, child abuse and neglect, youth violence, sexual harassment, intimate partner violence, sexual violence, and suicidal behavior. So all of these have been spoken about in an aspect previously in the presentation. Helping families deal with mental illness. So not every problem is serious. Many everyday stresses can cause changes in children's behavior. For example, the birth of a sibling may cause a child to temporarily act much younger than he or she actually is. And it's important to be able to tell the difference between typical behavior changes and those that are associated with more serious problems. So paying special attention to behavioral changes. Are the problems occurring across a variety of settings, at home, at school, with peers? Is there a change in appetite or sleep? Has there been social withdrawal or fearful behavior towards things your child is normally not afraid of? Are they more sensitive to things? Returning to behaviors more common in younger children, such as bedwetting for a period of time. Signs of being upset, such as sadness or tearfulness, signs of self-destructive behavior, such as headbanging or a tendency to get hurt often, so self-injury, and repeated thoughts of death. So again, signs and symptoms here. So consulting with a school counselor, nurse, or administrator, or psychologist, or social workers in the buildings is a really good idea if you start to see any of these changes in a student. They're not eating or they're throwing up, extreme difficulty concentrating or staying still. That's a shift from their typical behavior. Involvement in many fights or desire to badly hurt others. Some emotional changes might be feeling very sad or withdrawn for an extended period of time, severe mood swings that cause problems with relationships, sudden overwhelming fear for no reason, sometimes with a racing heartbeat or fast breathing, of things that maybe they hadn't been afraid of in the past, intense worries or fears that get in the way of daily activities. Some behavioral changes to note are seriously planning to harm oneself or planning to do so. Severe out of control behavior that can hurt oneself or others. That's, I think, when you see the point where a person does not seem to be responsive to anyone anymore. They're just going through a moment. Repeated use of drugs and alcohol, and drastic changes in the student's behavior or personality.
Everyone just has to remember that we have highly qualified, excellent mental health professionals in each building and school nurses that are also very excellent and knowledgeable. These are the people that you can always go to when you have questions about whether or not a student is doing okay, based on these three areas that we just discussed, that Ms. Lucio just went over.
So some ways to kind of like start a conversation with a student or a staff member who might be acting differently toward you as you seem down, distant, different, angry, upset, or disappointed. I've noticed you've been missing class, not turning in assignments. I'm sensing that you're feeling overwhelmed by today's class discussion. And we'll work together to figure it out. You mentioned that you always feel sick and tired during first period. Tell me more about what that feels like, and asking in a direct way. And it can be helpful to talk to a professional. Would that be helpful to you? So not things that are putting ownership of the problem on the individual student, but rather trying to gain more information to find out a little bit more about how they're feeling or what their sense is, or just some more information about their sense of being and well-being. Some unhelpful and helpful things to say. So a lot of time the language that we use can really make a difference. So some unhelpful things was, oh, everyone goes through that, or there's no use being upset about something. You have it really good, or that makes me feel bad because now I'm feeling personally hurt by your behavior or by your feelings. And, oh, okay, how is everything else? Like, that's no big deal. What else is going on? More helpful things to say. It sounds like you're dealing with a lot right now. If I was in that situation, I'd be upset too. It's okay to feel this way. So validating that someone's maybe not feeling so well in that moment or at that time. I'm worried about you. Is everything okay or all right? I do not know the best way to support you. Are you open to checking in with a school counselor as well? So as Eric had said, we have added additional supports into our PPS and wellness teams with additional psychologists, the social workers, the school nurses. Those are all people definitely that you would want to refer the student to and or follow up with on your own also, if you feel that there's been a major shift in terms of their presentation.
Yeah, those unhelpful items are items that dismiss the child's concerns or problems, whereas the helpful statements are ones that validate and take their concerns seriously. And that's extremely important when you're working with students who are struggling with mental health issues.
Okay, some gestures that can heal. It says celebrate, use put-ups, not put-downs, staying calm and patient, collaborate, asking for people to give their input, listening, active listening, inspire those two new ideas. So on this website, it has some more information about activities and ways that you can interact with individuals.
The best place to start is just listen, 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 hear the person, If you don't know what advice to give them or what to say, that's okay. Just listening is sometimes very powerful. And then remember, like we've been saying, you have a team to go to. Listen, 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 and then bring the issue to the team. It's okay if you don't have the answers, but you want to make sure that you handle the situation in the best way that you can. That's going to have the best outcomes for the student. So, even if you don't feel comfortable doing those other things, the best place to start is just to listen.
Okay, and supports for mental wellness. Encourage staff to practice self-care. So not only are at times students struggling, but your fellow colleagues or yourself might be struggling. Create an environment that allows staff to practice self-care habits as well as professional practices, and make them easily accessible.
You can't care for somebody else. Wait, hold on. How does that go? You need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of somebody else. And so that's what this slide is
I
encouraging.
think they refer to it as kind of like you as the adult have to put the oxygen mask first on the plane, and then you take care of the other people around you.
Exactly. And you can find more information about these programs that could support your mental health as a employee of the district on the personnel website. Follow that link, and you can get support through our employee assistance program. So, to summarize, remember our theme for the year, being present to promote a culture of belonging. We went through the Dignity Act. We talked about what harassment, bullying, and discrimination is. We talked about the different forms of school violence. We discussed the school safety plan, what teen mental health is like and the state of mental health for teens. We talked about staying healthy as a staff member, and we went over all relevant policies on the personnel website and on the BMCHSD website, and it'll also be in the employee handbook. Remember to stay present so that we can create a culture of belonging. I want to thank you all for listening to us and enduring this presentation. I hope you all have a wonderful school year, and Emily and I wish you all the best. Please know that we are here as resources to you as well. Don't be afraid to get in contact with us if you have any questions about this presentation, or if you have any questions about helping to support students with special needs or alternative learners. Thank you, everybody. Now I need to stop it.